Okay, this is Monday. It's about 10 minutes after 9. Doesn't look like anybody's going to come online. So I'm going to go ahead and record video. Some of you will watch later. I'm going to talk a little bit about Lab 3266 and a little bit about Chapter 4. Chapter 3 test is Wednesday. Hopefully you're working on your study guide. If you didn't get your study guide binder yet, there is a copy of the Chapter 3 study guide modules. And then, of course, the packet tracers got to get turned in. Labs, as I said, hold on to those, and we'll look at those if we ever get back, or I'll figure out some way of seeing how we can submit them later on. That's where you get the real time to play, and I know we got a lot of time, so the best way to learn how to do it is to just play around with it, see if you get it to work, see what other things you can do with it. So, Lab 3266 has to do a couple of little tricky things about it. First off, one thing that's neat about it is you're going to control now the board, whereas before we were controlling things with an analog device, like a potentiometer and so forth. Now you're going to actually control it with code, and code that is executed from a web browser. So, setting up the two lights, connecting them here. Now, again, our board is different than the board they have in the picture here. And so when they talk about these pins, our ground is over here. So when you're looking at and setting it up on your breadboard, make sure the ground pin goes here. And then this is pin 9 and 11, which are in different positions than you see maybe on the other board. And of course, they have to be the pulse modulator pins, pulse wave modulator pins, because we're going to, by a pulse, because we're going to be using a slider. And, so that's going to vary. It gives us a chance to vary the output of the electricity that we're sending, which are, a little different than these pins. And then, of course, these are the analog pins down here that we've used previously. Well, now we're using these digital pins because, we're sending a digital signal from a web page. So that's one thing. Now, when I did this, I misread the instructions a little bit. So I actually used pins 13 and 11. But no big deal, because all I had to do when I got down to this part, was make it pin 13 up here. I already had pin 11 here. Or I could have put 11 up here and 13 down here. It doesn't matter. Long as those pins are recognized in the code as LED on and off and LED dim. So the other neat thing about this lab is that we're going to import this stuff called widgets. Now, widgets, you notice, has a bunch of other things. It's a big library. We're taking out one book of the library called Interact. So when you go here to the widgets, this is the Interact book. Now, there are a lot of other things in widgets and other kinds of things that are already built in, and go down and play around with those in the future. This, that's kind of the way to think about it. Sorry, wrong one. That's the kind of the way to think about it. Is here's the library, and here's the book out of the library, or this is the book, and this is the chapter. So what these things allow you to do is create, if you run this piece of code, it allows you to create, I don't have this one connected. stay here, cancel this. We go to the one that I've already completed. And when I run this, what happens when you run this, sorry for all the scrolling, is it gives you either a checkbox, a slider, and if you look at the other page, there's other things that it gives you that you can use this to interact with the devices that are on the pins. So this first one, when you just send up a true or a false, gives you a checkbox. If you send up a range of tools, remember from chapter 3, T-U-L-E, of 0 to 255, it will set up slider. And notice I'm right in the middle right now, so it's 127. Over here, that's 0. Over here, it's 255. So they just set up like, they're just trying to show you what generic, here's what this interact function does. So you have to give it a name and a certain parameter, and the parameter will determine what kind of output you get. All right, so then when we go down here, we're going to connect this to the USB port, and if you did lab 3265, remember that our USB port is not USB 0 like they have in the example. It's ACM 0. So you have to adjust that. Then here's where I adjusted my pins because I plugged it into the wrong one when I was setting up my board. So then what happens when you run this, we have the two functions. We have a function here that will turn the LED on or off. And we have another one here. Well, this is where I did the challenge problem. We have another problem, one over here, where we dim it. So now it knows which one to do by the parameter that you put in there. So since I put in this parameter, I said, look, interact, right, with this function, which is defined up here. And the status starts out as true. So this says make a checkbox, LED on or off status. And this one here is a dim because I'm sending it a range of values. So it's going to make a slider. And that one goes to here. And what I did in the challenge was, the challenge down here was say, hey, see if you can turn the dim one like on and off, as well as be, dimmed and, totally lit up, really light, and then totally off. And then being able to turn it on and off, here, as well as dim it and so forth. So I'll show you. I'm going to try to see if I can do a little video of that and include that, just so you kind of see what that looks like. Anyway, that's lab 3266, where you are controlling a device, an IoT device with a web browser, basically. You would have an application that would run this code, and you would interact with it using your app. So a couple neat things here. We bring in some functions from a previous library, and then making it go on and do all sorts of stuff. The other lab in chapter 3 is this one, which is interacting with the WebEx teams. And I really was hoping to get this one. It's real simple Python or Pi setup, because you just basically say, hey, when I'm on a WebEx team or when I got an email, light this up. So like, how you get a notification on your phone, right? Somebody sends you an email or does something like that, a message pops up. Well, that message is actually triggered, by a, some kind of electrical impulse that has to, hey, send this. So anyway, that's all we're going to do here. The tricky part is, in all the code. Now, I tried to do this, and I was having a hard time getting onto this WebEx team space. I'm going to have to play around with it and see if we can do it. But just to kind of give you an idea, If you want to play with it, try to get it to work, fine. I think because I have some WebEx accounts, I'm having a hard time getting in. But basically, what happens is you got to get a key, a token key. And this is sort of like just like when you download or buy a game on Steam, they give you a key. And that's how it knows to make the connection. So with that key, you have to paste that key into the code. Okay. Now, this key, is this part here. You put the word in bear and paste in the rest of the code, which is what you would get, from here. That makes the link with the cloud, and then allows you to send the message up, and then to get by the firewalls by using SPI. So all of this stuff is when you're importing these different libraries or books, however you want to think about it. That's a lot of what we talk about this RESTful API. So these are API is a programmable interface, and the RESTful means that we're using already built-in HTTP protocols like GET, PUT, those kind of things to do the work for us. And part of that is going to include JavaScript, and that's what a JSON is. JSON is a JavaScript. But it really is kind of, I've done this lab at a conference, and it's really kind of a neat lab. But the whole key to doing the lab, as you can see, it's more code than it is wiring, is getting this key. And, that's the part that is tricky. So if you can get that going, fine. If not, we'll try to play around with that, or I'll play around with it and see if I can get it working. All right, so if you have any questions on the Chapter 3 study guide, something you can't find, talked a little bit about it, some of the things in the last video, let me know. And I'll be here every day, 11 o'clock. If anybody has a question. And I will turn on the Chapter 3 quiz, at 11 o'clock on Wednesday. All right, so that's Chapter 3.